We continue now at the top of Daf 85a Daf from Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 85a. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan with regards to the fruits that are brought or the produce that is brought for bikurim. Let's say it's brought from the mountains or the valleys. It's brought essentially from an area that is inferior. So Rabbi Yochanan said, lo kiddush, it's not going to get that kedusha of bikurim at all because it's brought from this inferior land. Reish Lakish says that if it is brought from that land, kiddush, it is going to get the holiness of bikurim. And the Gemara asked on the previous summit against Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara right now is about to continue the question, but the Gemara asked from a contradiction in Brises. The Brises were mentioning various areas also which are considered to be inferior. Let's say it grows on the roof, or it grows in a churba, which is a rune, or it grows in a svina, which is a boat, or it grows in an otzitz, which is a pot. In all of those cases, so there's a contradiction in Brises whether you just bring the bikurim and don't read from the parsha, or do you bring the bikurim and read from the parsha as well. And the Gemara said, according to Reish Lakish, that all works, because according to Reish Lakish, fundamentally, when it's brought from these inferior areas, there still is the kedusha of bikurim, and the whole question of just reading from the parsha is just whether it's considered to be me'artzecha, is it considered to be land, as the Gemara said on the previous summit. You can have a situation of a roof of a cave, that's considered to be karka. You can have a cultivated churba, you can have an otzitz, a pot with a hole in it, you can have an earthenware svina. Those could all be considered situations of karka. You would read from the parsha. Other situations would not be considered karka, and so you would not read from the parsha. But that all could make sense according to Reish Lakish. But as the Gemara continues, El Rabbi Yochanan kasha, but according to Rabbi Yochanan it's difficult. He says there's no kedusha at all in these situations. It's not bikurim at all. And the Gemara continues and answers Tanoihi. This is actually a machlukas Tanoim. We have another brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, shebegag v'shebechurba. If it grows on the roof or in a rune, mevi v'kore. You can have a situation where you bring and you read from the parsha, as we said. But then it also says in this brisa, sheba otzitz v'shebesfina. If it's in a pot or it's in a boat, eino mevi kol ikr. One doesn't bring the bikurim at all. And so already in this brisa, you see an indication that sometimes from inferior areas, one does not bring the bikurim at all, and that is in line with Rabbi Yochanan. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'chulan einon bos elam min amuvchor." They should be brought from the best areas. And then the Mishnah mentioned an area of Afarayim, which was a good area for grain. And so the Gemara brings something relevant to that. Amri le Yochanan umamre lemoshe. Yochanan and Mamre. Rashi says that they were the head sorcerers of Mitzrayim. They said to Moshe, that refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. The expression they used was, Teven atamachnis lafarayim. You're bringing Teven, you're bringing straw into Afarayim. What that means is you're doing sorcery in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is a place of sorcery. What's the point of doing sorcery in a place where it's full of sorcerers? Same basic idea as this expression. Afarayim is a place that's full of grain, full of Teven. You're bringing Teven over here. And what was his response? Amar Lui said to them, Amri Inshi, that people say lamasa yarka, to a place of yerek. Yerek is like vegetable. So yarka shkol, that's where you should take your vegetables, specifically over there. If you want to sell, that's where everyone is gathering to buy. So essentially the same basic idea. Over here in a place of sorcery, that's where I bring my sorcery. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Ein mevian lomi beis hazavolim v'lomi beis hashalachim. And there's a machlokas over here between Rashi and Tosas. What exactly ein mevian? What are we not bringing? Are we talking here about all carbon minchas, or are we talking here just about the omer and shtei halechem? Rashi Ksaviat says ein mevian omer u shtei halechem. We don't bring the omer and the shtei halechem. And Tosas say ein mevian b'chol ha-menachos kamrin, and we're talking about all menachos. But in any case, the Mishnah says ein mevian lomi beis hazavolim. You don't bring from the fertilized areas. That means to say an area that needs fertilization. V'lomi beis hashlachim, not an area that's irrigated. Again, it needs irrigation. V'lomi beis ha'ila, not an area where there are trees. The trees can also take away from the quality of the grain that grows. V'im hevi, but if he does bring from these areas kosher, it is still kosher. And the Mishnah continues and asks, Keitzad hu osa, what is the process when you're bringing from the field and you want to bring solus, you want to bring fine flour? What is the process? The process is as follows. Nei Roshan Rishon, the first year you plow it. The idea of that plowing is not a plowing to insert the seeds, it's a plowing to uproot any roots that might be in the earth to make it a good quality earth. Uveshana Shniya, and then in the second year, Zora, Kodem, LePesach, Shivim Yom, that's when he plants it before Pesach in the wintertime. He plants it 70 days before Pesach, V'huosa Solus, and then that makes the fine flour, and that's talking specifically about the solus that is going to be used for the Omer. V'huosa Solus Meruba, makes a lot of fine flour. And Ketzad Bodek HaGizbor, how does the treasurer of the Beis HaMikdash, how does he inspect that fine flour to make sure it doesn't have any dust within the soles? Machnis Yado L'Sochan, he puts his hand into it. Allah Ba'avak, if there's some dust, so then Psula, then it's disqualified. Achi Yinfeno, until he sifts it. Vim Hisli, and if there's any worms, then Psula, then it is disqualified. And the Gemara says, Ketzad Osa Neira Shana Rishona. Again, the Mishnah said, what does he do? First he plows it that first year, and then the second year, the Mishnah said he plants it before Pesach 70 days. And the Gemara says, Iboilu, they had the following question. Heichi Kamra, what exactly is the Mishnah saying? Is it saying Neira Shana Rishona, he plows it that first year, Ushnia Neira, and then in the second year, also in the summer, again he plows it for the purpose of the quality of the earth itself, and then Vizora, and then he does another plowing when he plants it. When he plants the seeds, you have to do a plowing immediately before that. That would be the plowing of the winter. According to that interpretation, there would be a plowing in year 1 in the summer, another plowing in year 2 in the summer, and then in the winter at the planting time, that would be the plowing for the purpose of planting. That is one possible reading of the Mishnah. Odilma, or maybe Neira Shana Rishona, he plows it the first year. Ushnia Zora below Neira, and then the second year he plants it without that plowing in the summertime. It would just be that plowing that is necessary for putting in the seeds. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here the following proof. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Avchite karzayim ukfarachim il mole smuchos li Yerushalayim. When it comes to the wheat of karzayim and kfarachim, if they were close to Yerushalayim, some change the girsa from il mole with an aleph at the end to il mole with a yud at the end. Il mole with an aleph at the end is often translated if not for the fact, but this here should be translated as if it was. Il mole smuchos li Yerushalayim, if it was close to Yerushalayim, Mevian mehen, they would bring from them, that's where they would get the grain from. Lefisha ein mevian esa omer element hasados hamudramos, because the omer is only brought from the fields, the southern fields, v'hamnu noros lakach, and that are plowed for this purpose. Shabahen chama zorachas, that it's in those kinds of fields that the sun rises and shines. Umehen chama shokas, and the sun sets in a way where the sun is going to help that the grain will grow. And Ketzad Osa, what exactly does he do? Neira Shana Rishona, he plows it the first year. Ushnia Choresh Vishona, and then in the second year he plows and repeats. Vizora Kodem LePesach Shivim Yom, and then plants before Pesach, 70 days before Pesach. Kedei Shetei Smucha L'chama, so it should be near to the sun. In other words, again, the sun should benefit it in terms of its growth. V'yosa Kone Zeres V'shibolas Zersaim, and then the way it will grow is the stem will be a zeres is a half an amma, and the shibolas, which is the part where the grain is, the ear, that's going to be 2 zeres. V'kotzer u'ma'amer v'dosh v'zora u'vorer v'tochin u'meraked, and then he'll be able to harvest, and he'll gather it, he'll thresh it, he'll winnow it, he'll select, grind, and sift it. Umevi eitz al gizbor, and he brings it to the gizbor. V'gizbor machnas yada l'soch, and the gizbor, the treasure of the Beis HaMikdash, he puts his hand inside of it. Im also ba'avak, if there's dust, omerlo, then he says, chazer v'nafa, you have to go sift it again. V'nafo sashniya, do it a second time. Mishum Rabbi Nasan Amar, in the name of Rabbi Nasan, they say gizbor soch yado shemen. The gizbor would actually put oil on his hand. Umachnas l'soch, and he would put his hand in there. Ad shemala kol avok, until he would bring up all of its dust. In any case, the point is katani mihas. Nevertheless, what does it say over here? It says in this brisa choresh v'shon. It says he plows and does it a second time, and so that sounds like in that second year there is 2 plowings. There is that plower. There is that plowing before the season, and then that plowing in the winter when they're actually planting. But the Gemara continues, V'letaimich, but according to your reasoning that you're asking from this brisa, masnisin lo katani shona. But look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't say to repeat. So you have a brisa which says one way, you have a Mishnah which seems to say the other way, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Amud Beis.